Dhurandhar 2 was a massive hit at the box office. No one's debating that. But what if it wasn't just a movie? In this breakdown, we're not actually reviewing the film. Instead, we're digging into a viral analysis that says this movie is something else entirely, something that's kicked off a huge debate online. And that right there is the central question, isn't it? The question at the heart of the source material we're looking at. Are we just talking about entertainment, or is there a much deeper, more calculated agenda going on here? So just to be super clear, we're going to be breaking down the arguments from one specific, very popular source video. Our goal here is to understand the claims it makes about how this film supposedly works to manipulate its audience. So here's how we're going to tackle this. We've got 5 main parts. First, we'll look at that core idea. Is it a film or is it an ad? Then we'll dive into what the source calls the advertiser's playbook and the propaganda tricks it claims are being used. After that, we'll get into the really meaty part, the fact-checking. And we'll wrap it all up with the most serious accusation of all, that the film is actively trying to rewrite recent history. Okay, let's jump right into the first big idea. This is really the foundation for this entire analysis. The source basically argues that to truly get what Dhurandhar 2 is about, you have to stop seeing it as a movie. And there it is. That's the central claim from the source. And wow, it's a bold one. The argument is simple. The film's real purpose isn't to entertain, it's to persuade you politically, to act like one giant commercial break right in the middle of an election season. So where does the analysis begin? Right at the beginning, with the film's disclaimer. You know, that fine print we all ignore. But the source says, hold on, this isn't just a legal thing. It calls it a legal cheat code. It gives the filmmakers permission to mix real-life people and events with total fiction, deliberately blurring that line until you, the viewer, can't tell which is which. Okay, so if the film is basically a giant advertisement, how does it pull it off? Well, that brings us right to the second part of this critique, the claim that it uses classic psychological tricks from the world of advertising to get you in the perfect frame of mind. And the key concept here is something called emotional priming. Just think about it for a second. The best ads don't just shove a product in your face. No, first they make you feel something. They put you in the right mood, the right emotional state, so you're ready to hear their sales pitch. The analogy the source uses for this is just fascinating. It says the film's opening scene is like a chili pepper. It's shocking, it's intense, it makes you feel angry or scared. According to the critique, that powerful negative jolt makes you hungry for an answer, for a solution. It makes you way more willing to swallow the ideological sweets, or propaganda points, that the film starts feeding you right after. And that leads us straight into the specific techniques at play. The source argues these aren't just clever writing choices. They are textbook propaganda tools designed to sell you something. Not a car or a soda, but an idea, a narrative, maybe even a political leader. Now, the source points to this line as a perfect example of a really smart trick. Think about it. When you have the main villain, the enemy, praising the hero, what does that do? It makes the praise feel so much more credible, more objective. The thinking is, hey, if even the bad guy is admitting the hero is this powerful, then it must be true, right? The critique also points out how enemy characters are basically used as mouthpieces. For instance, it claims a villain is used to deliver real-world political talking points against certain groups. And what's the effect? Well, when you hear those arguments coming from the mouth of a villain, they suddenly don't sound like political attacks. They can start to sound like patriotic truths. Okay, so that's all the theory and the psychological stuff. But this is where the critique really shifts gears. It moves from analyzing how the film works to looking at cold, hard data, directly fact-checking 2 of the movie's biggest claims about history and the economy. First up, foreign policy. The film apparently pushes this narrative that America was against Modi becoming prime minister. But the source then pulls up public records that seem to tell a very different story. A meeting with the U.S. ambassador before the election was even won, and a congratulatory phone call from President Obama on the very day of his victory. And then we get to the second and much, much bigger claim. This one is all about demonetization. The film supposedly portrays it as this brilliant masterstroke, a secret national security mission to cripple a flood of fake money coming from Pakistan. And wow, this table really just lays out the massive gap the source is pointing to. The entire movie plot is built around this gigantic 60,000 crore rupee threat. But the source pulls official data from the Reserve Bank of India's own report, which states the actual amount of fake currency detected was only 43 crore. The difference is just staggering. And to really hammer the point home, the critique highlights one last number, 99.3%. According to the source's citation of that same RBI report, that's the percentage of all the banned cash that came right back into the banking system. The source uses this figure to directly challenge the film's narrative that the policy successfully wiped out huge amounts of black money. And all of this, the framing, the techniques, the fact checks, it all builds to what the source argues is the final and most disturbing claim in the entire critique. That this film isn't just telling a biased story, it's actively trying to rewrite events that many of us literally watched happen on the news. The source argues that what the film leaves out is just as important as what it puts in. It lists several key events that are just missing. Things like the Prime Minister's surprise visit to Pakistan and the huge terror attack that happened just 8 days later, or the reported intelligence failures before the Pulwama attack. The claim is that these events were deliberately ignored because they complicate the simple, heroic story the film is trying to sell. And the critique uses a very specific and very powerful psychological term for all of this: gaslighting. You've probably heard the term. It's when someone manipulates you to the point where you start to question your own memories, your own perception of reality. And this quote from the source really just gets to the heart of the matter. The argument is that by twisting the story of events from just a few years ago, things we all saw unfold on our screens, the film is essentially looking the audience in the eye and saying, hey, don't trust your memory. What you think happened is wrong. This is the real story. And that's exactly where this analysis leaves us. It doesn't give us a neat and tidy answer. Instead, it leaves us with a final, really challenging question, a question about the incredible power of cinema, the fragility of our own memories, and ultimately, the battle over who gets to write the first draft of our history.